joint public hearing of the Committee on National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation, the Committee on Government, Corporations, Public Enterprises, Ways and Means Committee, and the Committee on Finance is hereby called to order. The Chair welcomes everyone present in this joint public hearing of the Joint Committee to discuss several proposed measures that seek to rationalize and establish reforms in order to create a fair, sustainable, and clear mechanism for the pensions of military and uniformed personnel and other related matters. Distinguished colleagues who are present this morning and guests, we convene today physically and virtually to find the need to address critical concerns, which, if not managed immediately, would mean dire consequences in the financial welfare of our country. I speak of the ballooning pension requirements of our MUP, which we fear may no longer be sustained by our scarce government resources in the coming years. Certainly, it is high time we created a standalone special fund so that we may deter the inevitable fiscal disaster of draining the public coffers attributed to the bloating pension requirements of our uniformed retirees, which up to this very moment completely rely on the national budget. The numbers don't lie and they boggle the mind. The actual total releases for the MUP pensions under the 2019 General Appropriations Act for MUP's pensions amounted to 107.2 billion pesos, while for this year, the adjusted appropriated amount is 80 billion pesos. As proposed under the 2021 National Expenditure Program, Congress is expected to approve 135.8 billion pesos to fund the pensions of the military and uniformed personnel. Before Joint Resolution Number 1 came into being, the MUP pension requirements were at 11 figures, 74 billion in 2017 and 76 billion in 2018. Be that as it may, we remain committed to fulfill our civic obligations to our men and women in uniform. After all, no less than the Constitution provides that the state shall, from time to time, review to upgrade the pensions and other benefits due to retirees of both the government and the private sector. But the tough question remains, how do we hit the right balance as we carry out our constitutional mandate to provide adequate remuneration and benefits to our MUP, while also ensuring that we have sufficient funds to manage our resource and financial obligations? In order to facilitate today's discussion, let us focus first on the key features of the proposed measures at hand by shedding light on the following matters. One proposal is to utilize the proceeds derived from interest and sound investment earnings from a corpus of funds collected from the sale of government assets and properties, or lease or joint development with the private sector. Hence, we need answers to some questions. First, what viable assets of the MUP services and the government in general can be used to establish the seed fund for this purpose? And second, how much can be generated to establish the pension fund, which, as estimated by our economic managers, could run up to almost 6 trillion pesos. Another proposal, as an augmentation to the first proposal, what would be the feasible rate of mandatory contributions from the active members of the MUP in order to sustain our funding need? How much would be the corresponding yearly share of the government in said mandatory contributions, if any? Concomitantly, since the compulsory retirement age will be an important factor in the continuity and viability of the fund, should it be maintained at the current 56 years of age, or should it be raised to 60 or even 65? If so, what are the fiscal implications? What is the potential impact on the future pension requirements should the scrapping of the indexation become a reality? What pension system should the government adopt in order to achieve financial standing that is sound and sustainable? And ultimately, what would be the total financial burden to the government should this new system be adopted? Lastly, lest we forget, the highlights and the material issues discussed during the subcommittee hearing of Senator Richard Gordon in reference to Senate Bill number 1785, pertinent to the proposal prescribing fixed terms for the Chief of Staff and other key officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, increase in the mandatory age of retirement of military personnel and provision of a more effective attrition system should be made part of the records of this joint committee hearing. A motion in this regard is in order at the proper time. Having said all that, doing the math and some simulations and correctly is the key to arriving at the most viable and acceptable solution to this very complicated problem that we as legislators and policymakers are facing. Before we proceed, allow me to acknowledge the presence of Senators Amy Marcos and Minority Leader Senator Franklin Drilon and Senator Coco Pimentel, who are virtually present. And may I ask the committee secretary to likewise acknowledge the presence and to welcome our guest resource persons. Committee secretary.
Good morning. With us today, those who are physically present are representatives from the Philippine National Police. We have Police Brigadier General Walfredo Pornillos, Police Brigadier General Roque Eduardo Vega, Police Brigadier General Rolando Hinanay, from the PNP Retirement and Benefits Administration Service, we have Police Brigadier General Arthur Bisnar. And virtually present is Police Brigadier General Rex De La Rosa, also from the PNP. Those who are virtually attending today's hearing, we have the Department of National Defense, headed by USEC Arnel M. Duco and USEC Cardazo M. Luna. From the Department of the Interior and Local Government, we have USEC Bernardo Florese Jr. and USEC Rico Judge Echeverry. From the Department of Budget and Management, we have Assistant Director Beverly Galmesa. From the Department of Finance, represented by Bureau of the Treasury, we have Treasurer Rosalia V. De Leon and Mr. Jose Carlos Sebastian. From the Armed Forces of the Philippines, represented by their Vice Chief of Staff, Vice Admiral Gaudencio Collado Jr., Brigadier General Serme Ayuyao, and MGen Adriano S. Perez Jr. From the Philippine Coast Guard, we have Vice Admiral George V. Ursabia Jr. From the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, we have Jail Director Alan Soriano Iral. From the Bureau of Fire Protection, we have Fire Chief Superintendent Jesus Fernandez. From the Government Service and Insurance System, we have Attorney Lucio Yu Jr. and Attorney Giovanni May Lin Quicoy, as well as Vice President Valerie Marquez. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. To facilitate today's discussion, may we just proceed to the question and answer to be propounded by the senators and do away with the usual presentations, if that is okay with my colleagues. And you will be recognized in the order of the time that you have logged in. So therefore, I'd like to recognize Senator Amy Marcos, the first to log in. And after Senator Marcos, Senator Dillon, and Senator Pimentel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me, po?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to give full support for this bill. I'm a co-author, and there are two that have been referred, I believe, to this committee. The resolution inquiring on the status of liquidation and winding down of the operation of the AFP-RSBS, as well as SB 1042 regarding the retirement pension. There are several questions that I hope our good chairman will deal with, and one is the status of the winding down and liquidation, given that COA has repeatedly flagged serious inaccuracies in the accounting of the RSBS in terms of funds and actual real property. Furthermore, I think there seems to be an agreement among the co-authors that the MUP should turn over or be supervised by GSIS for the pension funds. although they should not be commingled with the funds of other government employees. I am also curious as to all our resource persons' opinion regarding the position posited by Congressman Rufy Biason in the lower house, seeking to increase the share of the AFP in the sale of land covered by the BCDA from the original 35.5% to 55%. This is intended to find sources outside the GAA since, as our good chairman said, there is the humongous sum of 6 trillion which we anticipate and project. What is your take? Would this be possible? Thank you very much, and that will be all for now.
Yeah, who'd like to answer? Maybe DBM can answer your question or question, Senator Amy. DBM?
Yeah. Good morning, sir. I think we would like to throw the question to the Treasurer of the Philippines because she is the head of the technical working
Okay.
of the national.
So
Government.
is Treasurer Leah, are you present? Bureau of Treasury? Bureau of Treasury, are you present? Kindly unmute and answer the question. The chair would like also to acknowledge the presence of Senator Ronald De La Rosa virtually.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if there's no one from the Bureau of Treasury, perhaps we can request from them an accounting of this winding down and liquidation, because until today, we do not seem to have a clear picture.
Good morning.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, good morning, Senator Lacson and Senator Amy Marcos. This is Lea De Leon from the Bureau of Treasury. Ma'am, unfortunately, we have not really looked into the proposals of Congressman Rufus and also in terms of the sale of the BCDA because right now we were just following what was already sold and what is already being provided as part of the Armed Forces Modernization Program. We would be discussing this further also with our privatization office and of course in terms of the proceeds, whether we can still provide for additional share of the AFP from the proceeds of the sale.
Okay, that's fair. Perhaps you can look into it and let us know what your sense is. But in the meantime, would the Bureau of Treasury be able to help us to finally come to a conclusion regarding the winding down and liquidation of the assets of RSBS?
We will also discuss this, ma'am, with RSBS because we have not yet been consulted by RSBS in terms of the winding down.
Okay, I leave it to the good chairman to pursue these accounts so that we are clarified. Thank you, po.
Thank you,
Yeah,
ma'am.
just to follow up, Treasurer Leah,
Yes, sir.
how much,
Opo.
ano ba yung computation nyo doon sa seed fund? How much would we really need to sustain? Because there's so many figures, eh. May 7 trillion, may 9 trillion, may 5.5 trillion.
Yes,
And, we can discuss some simulations to ease up doon sa pag-form ng seed fund. So please.
yes, Mr. Chair, Senator Lacson. First of all, I think before we can really come up in terms of how much the seed fund would be, we also need first to arrive in terms of the different elements in terms of what would be the outflows coming from that fund and what are the inflows. Meaning to say po, magkano po talaga yung contribution and who would be contributing. So we need to finalize whether it would only be limited to the new entrants or even those in active service will already also start to contribute. Pangalawa rin po, yung pong whether the indexation would continue. Kasi po, for the actuarial study to be conducted by GSIS, we need a very comprehensive picture of in terms of the what would be the pension system, the structure for our MUPs, and what would be the coverage, whether it would really be for all, lahat po ba ng active, or it would only be for the new entrants. But based on the actuarial study nga po, ang come up ng before when we were discussing this during the informal technical working group, ang unfunded liability po then in 2017, 2018 was already about 3 to 4 trillion. So now yung pong nabanggit nyo ng figure, it has already ballooned to 6 trillion. So that's unfunded. And for us to be able to provide the seed fund, then we will also have to see saan po kukunin yung pong mga sources. And we have also discussed the possibility of using the proceeds from the privatization of military assets. But then, sir, again, we need to find out what is the comprehensive list of those assets para we can also value and find out how much we can generate from those assets. So marami pa pong kailangan inputs to be able to, Mr. Chair, to be able to arrive really in terms of how much the seed fund would be.
Or we can muna make an assumption, magkano yung seed fund na kailangan, and then we work on the figure to base our simulations on. Kasi kung meron tayong, assume montan tayo na stand-alone yung seed fund, ano, na walang support from sale or from extension ng retirement age or mandatory contribution ng active members or new entrants, etc., etc. Di ba mas maganda may working figure muna tayo, and then we work around that figure para pag nag-input tayo ng mga simulation ng mga pwedeng mag-support do sa seed fund, doon na lang tayo mag-determine kung ilang assets yung pwede nating ibenta. Total, identified naman natin yung mga government assets na posible nating ma-dispose or magkaroon ng joint venture or ma-list. Hindi po ba, Secretary? Ay, Treasurer?
Sige po, Mr. Chair, we can again work that out together with GSIS, DBM, and of course yung pong members of the MUP, yung pong sa, we can do a quick and dirty estimation muna as you have suggested, and then we can just again build in different scenarios.
Yeah, work backwards. Kasi yung latest actuarial study conducted by GSIS, if no reforms are introduced to the existing pension system, yung seed fund shall require an amount equivalent to 5.57 trillion. Ito yung working figure. So more or less, pwede tayo mag-identify ng mga government assets, both from the MUP and the government in general, kung ano yung pwede nating i-dispose to form the seed fund. But before we can determine that, maybe we can ask the MUP, those who are representing the MUP here in this hearing, kung ano yung pwede lang ma-contribute, say from mandatory contributions, etc., etc. So, okay po sa inyo yun, Treasurer Leah?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will go with your suggestion po and also work together with the members of the technical working group, including po DBM and the MUP committees.
Okay. I don't see Senator Drilon anymore. Maybe he's watching the basketball game. Senator Drilon, you're next.
Okay.
Senator Frank. Anyway, before we recognize Senator Drilon when he comes back, we'd like to ask the MUP, say muna sa PNP, how many are retiring every year and how many are you hiring every year? Kasi pwede natin ibanggayan, ano yung kung, so we can determine how much do we need as mandatory contribution kung i-apply lang natin to sa new entrants or mandatory contribution from all the active members of the PNP. So to find that out, we need muna to know ilan yung nagre-retire at ilan yung pumapasok and how much in pesos and centavos, paano nagta-translate yun? Please, DPRM or PRBS heads?
Hello, sir.
Average lang, ano, yung say for the last, say 5 years. Kung kukunin natin na average, how many are retiring? Tapos translate natin how much money is needed to fund those retirees, including the lump sum, yung 3-year lump sum, di ba? And then how many are we hiring? And ibangga naman natin doon sa active members of the PNP para makuha natin kung magko-contribute sila mandatorily, ilang percent ng kanilang sweldo. So please. Oh, Senator Dillon is back. The chair is now,
Every year.
will now recognize Senator Dillon after they answer the questions.
Every year. Yes, sir.
Yes, DPRM.
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, we have a attrition quota of about 5,000, sir, estimated 5,000 every year, sir. But this attrition quota is composed of several factors, sir. The compulsory retirement, the optional retirement, the resignation, the dismissal in the service, and those who were killed also, and those died because of sickness. So on average of more or less 5,000, sir, every year. Yung pong attrition na number na nag-generate ng PNP.
So for those na nag-retire, how much
Compulsory po, sir.
sa compulsory and even
Yes, sir.
yung optional retirement, magkano dapat ma-generate to fund the newly retired PNP personnel?
I think, sir, General Bisnar can
Sige.
answer, sir.
Mr. Chairman, sir, good morning. Sir, I have a table here, sir, that I can present regarding the claims that were filed to PRBS in the last 10 years, sir.
Sige, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Wala. That's... Ha?
We will ask the same question sa AFP, BJMP, BFP, Coast Guard, and even NAMRIA para ma-consolidate natin yung total funding requirement or possible contribution out of mandatory contribution of active members. So yung ibang uniform services, kindly prepare. While the PNP is preparing, Senator Drilon, you may ask your questions. Kindly unmute. Ayan, sige. Senator Drilon is recognized while the PNP is preparing the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is not a new problem. I assume studies have been made on the options available. I know for a fact that there were a number of studies done in the past administration. I do not know if anything was completed, but I ask this as a general question. Is there any study done on how to solve this problem, on the options available to the government from any one of our resource persons? That's our starting point.
Yeah, Treasurer Lea, can you answer? Or maybe DBM?
DBM, probably DBM.
Good afternoon, sir, Mr. Chair. We are always a member of the technical working groups. We are not the lead, so we are not aware of any formal study done by either of the technical working groups. The first one was under the previous administration with the DND as the chair, and now with the DOF as the chair.
So there is no study being done at all. I cannot believe that. This is not a new problem. This has been a problem that we have recognized for the past several years, for a decade. I cannot believe that no study is done. But is that what you're telling us? Hello?
Sir, I am not aware of any study done. Ka-perform lang po ng group namin. We're a new group handling this pension reform.
Now, Mr. Chairman, this is not an easy problem. It has tremendous consequences. The amounts involved are not small, and a lot of policies would have to be decided upon, including retirement, including sources, etc. I'm a little bit disappointed that over 4 years in this administration, and this problem is not new, I would keep on repeating, and no one has taken the initiative of studying this. We have been raising this issue, and we are at this stage. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if we can, it's not easy to craft legislation on the basis of what we have now. Would the chairman consider asking DBM to come up with a study as to a recommendation to the committee on how to solve this problem? I do not know, sir, if we have the capacity to come up with an overall solution to this issue, because not only the AFP, but also the PNP. This is our uniformed personnel. So that is my submission to the chair. It is difficult, I would repeat, to come up with a solution unless it is initiated by the DBM, by the DOF, by the DND, and present to us these proposals. That is my submission, Mr. President. Unless you are saying, unless you're saying that we can do this on the basis of this committee hearings, Mr. Chairman.
There were actually
Sir.
studies in the past, the latest of which was in 2018,
Okay.
but each time a study was conducted, walang continuity. Hindi naman natutuloy study, so lagi nakabitin. But I think we can come up with the legislation provided we're given the accurate numbers that we need. For
Okay.
example, we can simulate yung seed fund that is required is dependent on, yun nga, sinabi ko kanina, how much assets, how many of the assets of the government, national government, can be disposed or even leased or even entered into a joint venture agreement with the private sector just to provide the seed fund.
No.
And from there, we can get from the PNP and the AFP and the other uniform services kung magkaroon ng mandatory requirement or contribution yung mga active members, ano yung pang-ease up natin doon sa seed fund. Kasi kailangan lang natin dito yung corpus eh. Because once we establish the corpus, through interest earnings and investment earnings, pwede natin mabuo yung yearly requirement, annual requirement to address the pension or the needs of the retirees. So I think we can start from there, Mr. Distinguished Minority Leader. Yes, please. Unmute. Paki-unmute.
Yeah, okay. With all due respect to my chairman, I would like to think that the first thing we have to do is to figure out what system to follow. And from there, how much funding is necessary and the source of the funding. For example, are we talking about a contributory retirement plan? Number two, are we talking about a GSIS administered pension plan? Number three, what is our past service liabilities? And I would like to think that the past service liabilities could be influenced by maintaining or amending the retirement age. So it is my respectful submission, Mr. Chair, that before we look for the sourcing, we first decide as to the system that we would like to adopt. And from there, come up with what funding is necessary. And then we have an option too. If we cannot afford, if we cannot have the funding for the most ideal, what is the next most ideal? That is my submission, Mr. President, but Mr. Chairman, but I'm willing to go along and have my inputs for whatever the committee will decide. But my submission is that we first decide what is the system to follow. Is it contributory? Do we have a separate fund administered by the GSIS, et cetera, et cetera? That's my submission, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate the submission of the minority leader, but we can work on a combination of all that you mentioned. You know, we can work on a seed fund to be established, supported by other funding sources coming from mandatory contributions or increasing the retirement age, or even deletion of the or discontinuance of the indexation. We can work around several
Yeah, okay.
options.
May I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we in the committee come up with options, and then after we come up with options, the most ideal is option one, example. And then how much will it cost? And then we ask our resource persons, where can we source this? So to the extent that we can, my submission is that the committee comes up first with what is ideal. Let's say just theoretically, Mr. Chairman, let's say the most ideal is to have a retirement age extended up to 62 in the military and in the police, and maintain the present indexation. How much will it cost us to have a funded retirement plan over what period of time, so that at a certain point in the future, we can look forward to the national budget no longer being burdened by an annual appropriation for the pension. I concur with you, Mr. Chairman. We can do it simultaneously, but my thinking is let us come up, let's work out, let's see what is the most acceptable to the armed forces, to the enlisted personnel. I am sure the most acceptable to them is maintain the status quo. If we maintain the status quo and fund our the pension, how much do we have to come up with? I think that's a starting point, Mr. Chair. I will repeat, under the present system, 56 years old retirement, indexation, how much do we expect as a continuous funding under this system? And okay, so assuming that we come up with that, can we afford it? Is it the correct policy? Obviously, it's difficult. So what is the next option, and then how much will it cost? That's my submission. I'm willing to work with the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Drilon. That's exactly what we're trying to find out from the resource persons. That's so. May we now listen to the presentation of the PNP to address the concerns raised by Senator Drilon, and also my concern regarding attrition, retirement, contribution, etc., etc. Just give us the numbers so we can work around those numbers, di ba? Combination of yung i-consolidate natin sa PNP, lahat ng MUPs. So please, General Bisnar.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, good morning.
Meron ano.
Kindly zoom, Randolph, kindly zoom. Zoom out, Randolph.
Just
Out. Out.
sabi mo, kailangan nila ko dito. Bunyata.
Enlarge it, Randolph. Yes, sir.
Sige, proceed. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, good morning. Sir, let me just clarify, sir, that in the PNP, the process is that the DPRM issues retirement or separation orders, then the claims for pension and benefits plus gratuities are processed by PRBS.
Excuse me, for the information of my colleagues, the one making the presentation is the Director of the Police Retirement Benefit System. So, yes, please continue.
Yes, sir. And it is then funded by the DBM through the Directorate for Controllership. And the disbursement or release of the pension to the pensioner claimants is by the Finance Service. Shown in the slide, sir, are the orders issued by DPRM in the last 10 years. Composed of the different status of those who are retired or separated. For instance, sir, as I will show with the row 4 shows there are compulsorily retired, optionally retired, and so on and so forth. On average, sir, from 2010 to 2019, the average is about 4,329 per year who are issued orders, different orders. In the coming 5 years, sir, those who will be issued or those who will retire compulsorily numbers to 7,577. Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, the next table I am showing are the claims, the number of claims that were filed and processed by the PRBS or the PNP Retirement and Benefits Administration Service. In under column B, sir, these are the number of military and uniformed personnel who were issued orders. For example, in 2019, there are 5,872 personnel who were retired or separated. Shown in the table, sir, are the different benefits and gratuities that are received by this personnel. In column C, it shows the commutation of accrued or accumulated leave. For the last 10 years, we have spent a total of 51 billion for CAL alone. In this, in column letter D, it shows that there's a discrepancy between those who were issued orders and those who filed their claims. So, nag-overlap po to, sir. For example, sir, for this year, by July or August this year, yung mga nag-retire, sir, noong 2019, nag-o-open pa lang ng Land Bank ATM account nila. So that explains, sir, the discrepancy between the number of those who filed folders, claim folders for CAL and other benefits as against those who were issued orders by DPRM. Dito, sir, we'll go by the totals. from 2010 to 2019, there are 43,292 personnel who were retired or separated. Ito po yung inisyu ng DPRM na orders. Pero pag tiningnan po natin, ang nag-file lang po ng CAL sa PRBS is just 37,000. So when we go to the next, when it comes to pension, dalawa po yung ang option, either to get the 3-year worth of monthly pension or lump sum. Makita po natin in the last 10 years, 31,000 applied for lump sum with a total worth of 35 billion. The next expenditure po, when it comes to pension benefits, is yung gratuity po. Ito po ay binibigay dun sa mga nade-declare as total permanent physical disability or TPPD. So 1 year worth of salary po ito. For the last 10 years, sir, we have 625 personnel who were declared as TPPD and they received a total of 208 million.
Huh?
Ang last column po ay yung monthly pension. Ito pong number as of December 2019, say 91,913. Ito na po yung pinaghalo na MUP. Pag PNP, as far as PNP is concerned, sir, dalawa po yung klase ng MUP namin. Yun pong former members ng PCINP who joined the Philippine National Police in 1991 and retired as PNP personnel. The other one, sir, based on the Supreme Court resolution or decision in 2007, dineclare po nila na yung mga former or yung mga INP members na nag-retire before 1991 and hindi nag-join sa PNP are also, should also have their pension. Dito po sa number po na 91,913, ang isa pa pong kasama bukod sa dalawang MUP na yon ay yung mga survivors na mga namatay sa serbisyo at yung mga transferees ng mga pensioners o yung mga nakapag-retire na at nawalan na po at pumanaw na po. So for last year, there are 91,913 persons who were receiving pension from the PNP worth 42 billion. So ang grand total po ng...
That's including transferees and survivors na, yung 91,913.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
If we add all those benefits, sir, that are received, kasi po, isinama na po namin dito lahat, yung CAL, yung lump sum, yung gratuity at saka monthly pension so that we will have a better appreciation and idea kung magkano po talaga yung ginagastos ng national government when it comes to retirement pension and benefits. So for the last 10 years, sir, it amounts to 308 billion, sir. From a low of 15 billion in 2010 to a high of 52 billion
Excuse me, no.
last year.
Notice that nag-balloon ito sa 2019 because of Joint Resolution number 1, di ba?
Yes, sir.
Kasi from 35, halos naging 53 billion. It's on account of the passage of yung enactment ng Joint Resolution number 1. So maybe para we can move forward, pwede na natin siguro hindi consider yung before 2019, doon na tayo mag-work sa figure ng starting yung sa indexation, saka yung increase ng salary ng active personnel, di ba? So 52.9 billion, ito yung 2019 total consolidated na ito. kasama na yung lahat, lump sums,
1919?
gratuity, pati yung survivors and transferees.
Yeah.
So
Hindi
we can
pwede.
work on the figure from the PNP, including INP, yung former PCINP. Ang working figure natin is 52.9 billion. Yan ang requirement ninyo, at least on an annual basis. Tama ba? Okay.
Can we have a clarification, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator Dillon.
Yes. The figure 308.7 billion is being flashed on the screen as the total expense for the last 10 years. Hindi ba?
That is correct.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman. Can we say that the average for the PNP alone is 30.8 billion per year, or no?
Does it not quite accurate because nag-jump ito ng 2019 because of the indexation saka yung sa pagpas natin ng doon sa Joint Resolution number 1. So from 35 billion in 2018, yun ang last, no? Naging 52.9 billion in 2019. Kaya sabi ko,
Okay.
i-record na lang natin yung pagtrabaho natin sa figures doon sa 2019 data.
Which
Kasi
is-
kung magre-relate
which is-
tayo sa 10 years, medyo hindi na accurate yun.
So how
Out
much-
of date na yung,
How much is it, sir?
52.9 billion in 2019 from 35 billion in 2018, 31 billion in 2017. Biglang nag-jump ito ng 2019. So I think it is for our purposes in the purposes of this discussion, mas maganda mag-rely na lang tayo on the 52.9 billion.
In other words, rounding off, Mr. Chairman, we're saying that the annual allocation needed for PNP alone is roughly 53 billion. Is that a correct
That is
statement,
correct.
sir?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Senator
So,
Dillon.
and as the years would go on, this would increase. Is that a correct assumption, sir? Or,
Yes,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we were informed earlier na ang average na nagre-retire sa PNP sa ngayon is 5,000 a year. Yon. So yung madadagdag yung 5,000 retirees every year. So in 2020, after 2019, and yes, General Hinanay,
Mga 4,000, sir. 4,000 plus lang po, sir.
4,000 new retirees every year.
Okay.
So expect na in 2020, nadagdagan na yan ng 4,000 retirees. And in 2021, madadagdan pa uli ng another 4,000 retirees.
So,
So-
this is where it becomes very difficult. 53 billion, we say, is the annual appropriation necessary on the basis of the present benefits. Now, assuming that this is, we make this a funded contributory retirement plan as an option, how much is the past service liabilities that we have to fund? Because I remember, sir, prior to about 1998 or 90, whatever, PNP was part of the GSIS. Is that a correct assumption? Is that a correct
Sir.
recollection?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor.
Yes. So what year did PNP get out of GSIS?
If I remember it right, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, it was in 1991 when the PNP was, or probably a few years after that,
No,
sir.
no. Cannot be 1991 because I was not yet in the Senate in 1991. And I remember it was, I think, Senator Ponce Enrile who sponsored this measure. So it must have been after 1995. In any case, that can always be checked. My question is, what happened to the contribution and that were made, assuming that there was any? Was there a what contribution to the GSIS? What did we do with the funds, which presumably is attributable to PNP personnel in the GSIS funds?
Please answer.
Sir, I just can relate to you my experience here. We receive funds from GSIS, probably a portion of what we have contributed when we're still with the GSIS, sir.
Well,
It's a portion.
this is a difficult. So, are we saying that our PNP personnel were given a lump sum pension lump sum amount corresponding to the years of service that they have rendered?
To be honest, sir, we cannot. I can't remember
Obviously, these
Yes, sir.
these are facts, Mr. Chairman, that
Yes,
we must look at, and I am sure there are records of this to describe to us what happened, because I do recall very well, and this can be confirmed. Prior to the passage of the law, the the PNP personnel being part of the civilian sector of our bureaucracy was covered by GSIS. A decision was made after 1995 that the PNP wanted to put up something similar to the, if I recall correctly, RSBS or something like that. And therefore, they were removed out of GSIS. That's shown in the law. So that's why we asked what happened to those. There were contributions made. What happened to those contributions? And if you got reimbursed for the contribution, what is the effect of that? So that is why we should know these facts, and we need technical advice, Mr. Chair. I do not know the answers to all these questions that I'm raising, and again, I do not know if these are relevant unless, if we come up with a system. So siguro, sir, we first find out, ano bang gusto natin gawin? Do we just fund on a yearly basis these pension liabilities under the budget? Is that sustainable? I don't think so, because as the good chairman said, already you start with 53 billion more or less for the PNP alone. And this is annual, I assume, sir. 53 billion annually to sustain the present benefits for the PNP alone. This does not include the AFP. This does not include increases in salary. So we have to make a policy. That's my submission, Mr. Chair. A policy decision must be made. Do we fund this continuously under the budget, assuming that we sell the assets? After we pay for 1 year, 53 billion, what will happen next year? We still pay 53 billion. Makuubos din ho yung ating pundo that we generate out of the sale of the government assets. So we go back again to funding it from the budget. That's my submission, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dillon. Are you done, PNP?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Sige. May we now hear from the AFP? Gusto na malaman ngayon kung magkano yung funding requirement ng AFP, buong AFP, from the GAA to sustain your monthly pension, yung mga retirement.
Yes.
So we want to be shocked. So we want to be continuously shocked. That's why we want to hear from everybody. And after the AFP, we want to hear from the BJMP, BFP, Coast Guard, even NAMRIA. So sige, AFP, are you ready to make your presentation? Because I understand,
Mr. Chairman,
marami yung retirees ninyo kasi ang PNP, 95,000. Ang AFP, 140,000 ang kanilang retirees.
Correct, sir.
that are being funded ng GAA. So AFP, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I am
From the DND, Undersecretary Luna.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ding Luna, sir. Sir, you're correct. Our current pensioner for 2020 is 140,000 being funded by 58.9 billion in pension. This includes already the compulsory retirement, the optional retirement, and beneficiaries of those who were killed in action. Per projection for 2021, it will be 143,586. So an increase of about 3,000 plus. And so on up to the projection up to year 2026 is about an increase of about 8% per annum. And that is proportionately the increase in the pension. For example, for 2021, 143,000 pensioners, it will be 64 billion. 2022, 147,000, it will be 65 billion. 2023, 150,000, it will be 66 billion.
Enough.
Yes, sir. So,
I tell
you
you.
can see, sir, we're increasing by 8% per annum. Ang problema natin, sir, very few are dying, kaya siguro...
Ano na to, Ding?
Yes, sir.
Consolidate, aggregate total na ito kasama na survivors, transferees.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Lahat na ito. Pati yung lump sum.
Lump sum kasama, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So ang hinanap natin for the but first I'd like to recognize Senate President Pro Tem, Senator Recto, who just joined in, and also Senator Bongo. Welcome, sirs. So ang hinanap natin dito, halimbawa ito Ding, kung alisin natin yung 3-year lump sum, kasi bigla yun gawin na lang natin, wala nang lump sum, monthly pension, magkano matitipid. And then, kung magpapakontribute tayo mandatorily sa active members ng AFP, PNP, all the MUP, magkano yung matatanggal natin o maibabawas natin do sa total, aggregate total ng lahat ng MUP. That's what we are trying to find out here.
Yes, sir. We will have to compute that.
Yeah.
You have that.
What would you suggest? How many percent deduction from the base pay of the uniformed personnel ang pwede nating makuha to form part of the seed fund? Not just the seed fund, but to sustain the fund that will be used to pay the pension and retirement pay of MUPs. So can you do the math for us? Maybe in the next hearing you can present to us para makabawas tayo sa or makatulong do sa requirement yung 58.9 billion for the AFP and 52 or 53 billion for the PNP.
We're asking if we remove the lump sum. If we remove the lump sum.
If we remove the lump sum, siyempre maiibsan yan, di ba?
96.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ang problema niyan, sir, yung mga nagre-retire kasi, sir, may option whether they have to take advantage of the lump sum or not.
Hindi nga, if
So,
we
assume na lang natin lahat mag-lump sum.
Hindi, if we enact a law at alisin na natin yung lump sum, then automatic yan, puro monthly na, wala na yung 3-year lump sum. Malaki rin yun Senator De La Rosa, parang 7 million nakuha niyan sa lump sum niya. Senator
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, Mr. Chair,
Sir, the same
Senator
figure lang,
Dillon,
sir. The same
Senator
figure because yung mga nag-lump sum before ay magre-resume ng pension and then so on and so forth. So, the same figure, sir. It will not change.
actually, because na-lump sum nila, after 3 years pa sila makakatanggap ng monthly.
Yes, sir. Yun namang nakatapos ng 3 years, then yung kaka-retire lang magla-lump sum. So, parang it's a dynamic progression, sir. At sabi ng PGMC, it's the same figure as projected, sir.
just, Mr. Chair,
Senator Dillon is recognized.
yes, just to put this in context, how much is the PS today of the AFP and the PNP? In other words, if you compare the salary of those in the active service today, how does it compare to the budget for the retirees?
Kindly
So,
respond.
how much is it? How much is appropriated?
Yeah, the minority leader wants to find out ano na ngayon ang equation sa PS ng mga active members kung i-compare do sa retirement benefits ng mga nag-retire na. How much?
Yes, because the PNP says that the retirement fund that the annual retirement appropriation is 53 billion. The AFP says today it's 59 billion. Next year it is 64 billion. So just to have, for purposes of putting it in context, how much is the PS of PNP and how much is the PS of the AFP?
Sir, the PS of the AFP for 2021 is 117 billion, and our pension requirement is about 64 billion. So it's about 50%.
About how much?
About 50%, sir.
Your requirement for 2021 is 64 billion. Huh?
117 billion.
Is 117 billion is your
Almost
PS?
4
50%.
over 117.
Yeah.
Yeah.
64 over 117.
Yes. And the police,
54%, sir.
PNP, how much? PS, PNP.
Mr. Chair, for 2019, sir, we have a
No, mag-apples to apples na lang tayo. 2019. So compare natin doon sa 53
Yes, sir.
billion. Okay, sige.
we need 131 billion is our PS requirement, sir.
For 2019. So that's
Yes, sir.
53 billion over 131 billion.
Yes, sir.
Yun, there you go, Senator Dillon.
so now, by the way, where we are on it was in 1996, in February of 1996, when the uniformed personnel, the PNP, I think in particular, made the last contribution to GSIS. In other words, after February of 1996, they no longer remitted any contribution to the GSIS because of the law we enacted.
I guess it was in 1997, yung passage ng 8291, yung charter ng GSIS. Parang doon na discontinue.
My information is that na discontinue noong February of 1996.
96. Okay, anyway.
So, well, so that, these are the magnitudes of what we're looking at for PNP. Out of a 113 billion for those in the active service, we pay an additional of 53 billion for those retirees. And in the AFP, it's for 2020, it's 59 billion. For retirees, 117 billion. This is my point, sir. As we go on down the road, this will keep on increasing. And in fact, I am surprised this is just the figure that we're looking at, because I thought it has already crossed on this. Maybe Senator Recto can help us, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes, Senator Recto is recognized.
Yes, thank you,
I wanted here.
Mr. Chairman. There was a point in time, Mr. President, when it already crossed. Now, since we increased the salary of the uniformed personnel, naturally, because of their sheer number, tumaas ulit yung PS. Tinasa kasi natin yung sweldo ng polis at ng sundalo, uniformed personnel. And that's why now, tumaas ulit yung PS. Okay? Pero, in the future, hahabol din yung retirees. And that's why we filed the Senate bill. No? My recommendation is this. Okay, in that bill, if we read it, my recommendation is that we put a retirement plan with the GSIS. Halimbawa, ang civilian Fund A, ang military Fund B, ang uniformed personnel. Okay? Halimbawa, we have to decide as a body or as a government, let's say, for example, by 2022, let us respect first the indexation. because I don't think it will be correct na maging Indian giver naman ng gobyerno. Okay? Respect the indexation, because when our uniform personnel, when our personnel joined the AFP or PNP, ito yung usapan na retirement benefits. So dapat yan, irespeto yan, ang tingin ko dyan. Nevertheless, let's have a time frame. For example, by the year 2022, lahat ng papasok by the year 2022, iba na yung usapan. Okay? Meaning to say, okay, kung ano yung nasa GSIS charter sa civilian, let's say, bawasan na sweldo ng 10%, ang gobyerno magbibigay ng additional 10%, yun naman i-invest ng GSIS for the new retirement benefits of our uniform personnel. If we want to give our uniform personnel more, then we can, kaya Fund B halimbawa, okay, 10% bawas sweldo, 15% naman ang contribution ng national government. Assuming lang, okay? That is now invested by the GSIS for future retirement benefits of all those who enter the service, let's say in the year 2022. Okay? And then, with regard to those in the service today na hindi pa nagre-retire, yun, there will still be a feature hanggang maubos lahat yan in the General Appropriations Act subsidized by taxpayers' money. Tutuloy pa rin yan. Okay? Until matapos na yung lahat who entered the service prior to 2022. Okay? Now, if we think it is still too expensive, so walang dagdag gastos to, okay? If we think we want it a little cheaper yet, then we can raise also the retirement from 55 or 56. Pwede natin gawin, kung recommendation ng uniform personnel yan, gawin natin na 60, malaki din ang savings ng gobyerno dyan. If you increase the retirement to 60. Okay? Why? Because at 55, assuming on the average we live to 75, that's 20 years na babayaran ng gobyerno yan. At 60, 15 years na lang babayaran ng gobyerno yan kung average hanggang 75 ang buhay. Okay? So, yan ang bottom line dito, Mr. Chairman. Okay? So, I submit, let's pass a law, halimbawa, by 2022, lahat ng papasok sa service, may bagong sistema na tayo with GSIS. Meron ng retirement benefits na makukuha sila when they retire with GSIS. Fund B ang tawag ko doon. May bawas sahod just like any other government employee. May contribution din ng national government for the retirement plan just like any other government employee. If we think the uniform personnel deserves more in the retirement dahil buhay nila yung nakataya, then the national government can give more. Instead, let's say, for example, kung ang ordinary civilian, 10% ang contribution ng national government, sila 15. Halimbawa lang. Okay? And then yung bawas sa sweldo, pare-pareho lahat. Okay? And then respect the indexation kasi everyone who entered the PNP, as I said earlier, or the uniform personnel, may usapan na yan maliwanag yun I don't think you can take that back. And then decide also, masyadong mababa ba yung edad na 56 for retirement? Remember, that law was made when the average Filipino would live only until a certain age. Okay? Today, the average Filipino will probably live until 75 or 70 to 75, thereabout. I don't have the exact number right now. So we are living longer, Mr. President. So maybe we can increase the age of retirement of our uniform personnel from 55 to 60. Malaki rin ang bawas dyan in our future gastos, Mr. President. So I just wanted to make that manifestation and put that on record. So thank you to the chairman and to the minority leader for the
Yes, thank you, Senator Recto. Senator Dillon, you're
Yes.
raising your hand.
Yes. The statements of the Senate President pro tempore only indicates that we cannot solve this problem overnight, but we must set the rule so that we see the light at the end of the tunnel. So that we see the light at the end of the tunnel when the national budget is no longer continuously burdened by annual substantial appropriations for the retirement benefits. Because as we increase our military uniform personnel, there is an increase in the budget because they will retire. And as long as we have indexation, this will keep on multiplying. So, but on the other hand, we have to recognize the certain givens, like, you know, we cannot change abruptly. You know, we can change the benefits. That is why the Senate President pro tempore was saying that maybe we will have a different set for the future retirees, different set of rules. Now, just as an input, Mr. Chairman, during the hearings conducted by Senator Gordon, where we discussed the retirement age, I get the impression that the officers of the armed forces are open to a discussion of increasing the retirement age, because they realize, firstly, if we look at the other jurisdictions, I think ours is the youngest. The others are already talking about 60, 62. Whatever it is, there is. I would like to think that there is a major reform that we can do because of the implications on the past service liabilities. As the Senator Recto said, bababa yung ating liability pag naitaas natin yung ating retirement. But it is not as simple as that, because there may be already officers in the armed forces who would look forward to retirement at 56. So if you increase it to 62, then we have to look at the other side. Remember, Mr. Chairman, that among the issues that the Reform Armed Forces movement had in 1986 was the extensions given by the past administration to the incumbent officers, which has resulted in junior officers' careers being suppressed because the limitation as to the number of star rank generals plus the extension of the service of those on top would suppress the ability of those below to improve their career. So these are items, both fiscal and non-fiscal, that we must look at in coming up with a package. That's why I would repeat, this is not an easy thing to do, and I do not feel competent about coming up with a plan. Maybe Senator Recto can come up with it. I'm willing to look at it, but just as a statement, this is a very complicated, very technical issue which can be influenced by changes in policies in certain areas. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Before we proceed, the chair acknowledges the presence of Senator Dick Gordon. May we now hear from the Coast Guard, and then after the Coast Guard, BFP, Bureau of Fire, and then BJMP, Bureau of Jail Management, and then NAMRIA, if you're still around. So, Coast Guard, can you now present the way it was presented by the PNP and the AFP? Gusto na lang namin makita yung mga numero na tukol sa retirement pay. Go ahead.
Good morning, sir, Mr. Chair. On the part of the Coast Guard, by the way, sir, this is Admiral Dr. Sabe Jr., the Commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard.
You're coming garbled, Coast Guard.
I'll adjust my microphone, sir. Mr. Chair, this is Admiral George Sabe Jr.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. On the part of the Philippine Coast Guard, sir, we are not that threatened so far because Coast Guard is a relatively new organization, having been separated from the Philippine Navy in 1998, and now as a new organization, 10 years from the time that we got our enabling law, we have a total of, for now, a total of 2,445 retirees. 2,445 retirees. And for their pension, it is more or less 15.9 or 16% of our PS funds. So it is not actually eating so much yet of our PS funds. And it is decreasing.
Excuse me. In pesos and centavos, how would that translate? Yung 15.9% of your PS. Magkano yung
It's
retirement from the GAA ng Coast Guard?
It's 1,213,404 and 941. 1.2
Again?
billion. Around 1.2 billion.
It's for 2020.
The 2019, sir, that is for 2019.
2019, yes.
Aye, sir. That's for the pension, which accounts 15.9% of our PS funds. Because our PS funds for 2019 is 7.6 billion pesos. And for this year, sir, the pension in terms of percentage will eat up 14.8% of our PS funds. So it is decreasing actually, sir. For reason that our PS funds is increasing, considering that the Philippine Coast Guard is into recruiting more for the Coast Guard to expand. We are taking in more versus our pensioners or those who are retiring. The retiring personnel are lesser than those we are recruiting. Hence, that explains that the pension that we are paying actually is decreasing in terms of percentage. But in short, sir, the Philippine Coast Guard is not that threatened yet as far as addressing the pensions of our pensioners. So ours is very different from the situation of that of the AFP and the PNP, sir.
Okay, are you done?
Yes, sir, I'm done, sir.
So far, ang requirement sa retirement nasa mga 113.1. So may we now hear from the Bureau of Fire Protection?
At present, the Bureau of Fire Protection strength is 28,068, but we have just recruited additional 2,000 just this October 1, sir. So the running personnel now of the Bureau of Fire Protection is 30,068. And looking at the historical data of pensioners per year, we have a total number of 8,847 pensioners as of this moment, Your Honor. And the actual pension expenditure is equivalent to 3.6 billion, Your Honor. And if we are going to sum up the total pension from 2010 to 2019, we will have a total amount of 15.9 billion, Your Honor. Every year,
pension or retirement expenditure in 2018 before the indexation?
If 2018, sir, is we have a actual pension expenditure of 2.267 billion. To be exact, sir, 2.2 billion 267 million 870,000 and 295 pesos. Your
And in
Honor.
2019, nung nagkaroon ng joint resolution, 3.6 billion.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. How about BJMP?
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of this committee. Magandang umaga po. From the BJMP, sir, currently, we have a total of 14,763 active personnel at present. And for 2019, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, our pension appropriations is 15% of the total personnel services per GAA. So we have only a 1,358,783,000 out of the 9,219,912,000 personnel services per GAA. That is for 2019, Your Honor. And for 2020, we have a pension appropriations of 1,461,426,000, which is 14% of the personnel services per GAA of 10,528,213,000. And for the next 5 years, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, we have a projected retirees of 1,021, that is from 2021 to 2025, or an average of 204 retirees per year. And our total number of BJMP retirees as of the present, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor, is only 3,335.
Yes, I'd like to go back to BFP. Yung binanggit mong figure kanina, hindi pa kasama yung lump sum, ano? At saka yung survivor and transferees? Wala pa. Pension lang ito ng
Yes, sir.
retirees.
Yes, sir.
Kung isama mo yung lump sum, pati yung survivor saka transferees, magkano yung total nyo? Yung pension yung expenditure, retirement expenditures from the GAA.
Sir, yung total appropriation of 3.6 for 2019, this is a combination of survivors and pensioner, Your Honor.
Pati lump sum na kasama dyan?
Let me check on that, Your Honor, and we'll get
Sige.
back to you immediately.
How about BFP? Yung minention mo kanina amount, yung 1.358 billion, 50% of PS, all in na yan. Para lang para-pareho yung consistent lang tayo sa AFP sa PNP. Pati lump sum, survivor, transferee, kasama na. BJMP?
Yes, sir. Pension lang po yung nabanggit kong figure.
I-total mo nga para para-pareho yung... I-total mo pati yung lump sum saka yung survivor and transferees.
Yes,
Para
Mr. Chairman.
accurate yung numero natin.
We will do that, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor.
Okay. Bureau of Fire, kasama na lahat yan.
Honor.
If you include the funds for appropriations for survivor at saka transferees, magkano total nyo na? And lump sum. Overall total.
Sir, kinukuha lang, sir, sa admin namin ngayon.
Okay.
Then, babalik kami kaagad, sir.
So with that, I'd like to recognize first, with the permission of Senator Bato, because you logged in first, Senator Bongo wants to make a manifestation. Senator Bong?
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair, Senator Bato, with your indulgence. I join you here today to seek your support for the various bills on military and uniformed personnel services, separation, retirement, and pension reform, including my own Senate Bill 1419, measures which aim to maintain financial flexibility on the part of the government while also ensuring that the state can and will continue to provide adequate benefits and remuneration to our men and women in uniform. Our military and our uniformed personnel perform the most important task of ensuring our nation's peace and security. Even the Constitution recognizes the invaluable role of the military and our uniformed personnel in protecting the nation and its citizens from threats both within and outside the country's borders. As a nation, we bear witness to their personal sacrifices. Sila ang frontliners natin sa lahat ng gerang hinaharap ng sambayan ng Pilipino, kahit dito sa pandemyang ito o hindi man sa pandemyang ito. Sila po ang ating mga frontliners. It is for this reason that President Rodrigo Duterte and I have been supportive of our armed forces and uniformed personnel. The President has worked to double their compensation. In fact, I myself followed up with several government agencies and our legislators, including the senators, to ensure that this presidential directive is implemented as intended. Ang gusto po ng Presidente, masaya ang sundalo, malinaw po yan. Moreover, in recognition of their valuable support and contribution to nation building, I have worked to promote their rights and welfare both in and outside of the Senate. I have filed measures in support of this endeavor, including a bill that provides free legal assistance to police and military officers and other measure that seeks to modernize the Bureau of Fire Protection. I understand that there is so much more we can do for our men and women in uniform. One of these is addressing their concerns regarding their pension and retirement benefits, which is what the various bills on pension reform are about. The 1987 Constitution mandates the state to strengthen the patriotic spirit and nationalist consciousness of the military, as well as to ensure professionalism in the service and give adequate remuneration and benefits to its member. There is no better time to fulfill this than now, when at least in the recent years, the state is paying more for retirees than for those in the active service. In fact, in his 2017 budget message, the President Rodrigo Duterte emphasized that reform should be pursued in view of the ballooning budget burden, where the total cost of the pensions of retired soldiers will exceed the compensation of those in active service. The President has known of this problem for quite some time now. Measures of this import have been presented to the executive, but the President has opted not to certify those as urgent in the past. Ito po yung 2019, about first quarter po ito. The President understands that while change is necessary, it should not be at the expense of what our men and women in uniform have sacrificed all these years. Marami sa kanila ang nakiusap na ipagpaliban ang pension reform dahil marami sa kanila ang gusto ang mag-retire at pinagbigyan naman sila ng Pangulo. Meron pong lumapit sa akin ng mga Sergeant Majors sometime in February of 2019 sa isang anibersaryo ng Philippine National Police at pinakinggan po sila ni Pangulong Duterte ang kanilang mga hinaing. But we have to ask ourselves, how much longer will we wait? As I have said, the President wants to give our heroes what is due to them, but we also have to ensure the fiscal stability of our nation. Reform in the system of benefits for the military and uniformed personnel is necessary to achieve a balance between government interests and the mandate to ensure the provision on adequate remuneration and benefits to them. After all, the Constitution also states that the state shall from time to time review to upgrade the pensions and other benefits due to retirees of both the government and the private sectors. If this problem continues, the country might face significant fiscal problems in the future. This will be a problem not just for the retirees, but also for our future financial managers and the entire military service and the country as a whole. We are here to enact a measure that will avert this potential crisis. We in the legislature hope that will ensure the stability and sustainability of the country's finances in the future. As a form of a compromise and in pursuit of a win-win solution, the new pension system, which our financial managers in the executive came up with, and it is embodied in my Senate Bill 1419, will only apply to new entrants and those who will enter active service after the effectivity of this law. Those who are already in active service can be assured that their pensions are secured. Sa totoo lang po, nung nabalitaan nila nung nakaraang taon, ang dami pong gustong mag-retire. Even sa PSG po, ang daming nag-file po ng early retirement. At nung nabalitaan nilang na-hold po yun, ay binawi po nila ang kanilang retirement. This will also to alleviate concerns about uncertainties in the pension system. Under this compromise, those who are already serving now can rest assured that their pension benefits will not be affected. While we may see the full effects of this pension reform in only about 35 years, this will go a long way towards ensuring that we get there in the first place. Kahit wala na tayo sa mundong ito sa panahong yon, ang importante po ay nakapagbigay tayo ng lunas sa problema. In the long run, makakabuti ito sa ating kasundaluan at sa ating bansa. Both the finance and the budget departments have already expressed their support for this to this reform, but we in the legislature will also listen to the soldiers, the retirees, the future soldiers, and everyone else who will be affected by the measure. The President and I will support the will of the majority. We will listen as we have always done. Bukas po ang aming opisina sa lahat ng gustong magsalita. Sabihin nyo na po, ngayon na. Kung ayaw nyo, magsabi kayo. Kung gusto nyo po, sabihin nyo rin po. However, I understand that this is still subject to the will of the Congress as a whole. There is no better time to advance and pass this reform than now, while President Rodrigo Duterte, who cares deeply for men and women in uniform, is still in office, and whose wisdom and sheer political will enable to push for this compromise rather than what could potentially be a harsh transition to a new pension system, which could very well be inimical to the interests of our military personnel and dangerous to the stability of our country as a whole. Baka iba na ang priorities ng susunod na administrasyon at hindi na rin po ito masusolusyonan. Again, as I said, we have to act now. We have to strike a balance between giving our heroes in uniform what is due to them and ensuring the viability and sustainability of our financial future. We must do this by listening to those who will be affected, keeping an open mind and understanding what it means to truly and selflessly serve our country. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Go. Before I recognize Senator De La Rosa, very quickly lang, kasi nasa atin naman lahat ng PS, di ba? Simulation lang, ang requirement natin total for 2021 is 135 billion 822,111,000 pesos for the retirement benefits ng ating retirees. So from there, tingnan natin kung magkano mababawas natin. So kung mag-deduct tayo ng say 5% muna from the PS nung nasa active service. AFP, kindly compute for us 5% of your total PS. Yung sa uniform lang, active in the active service. And then PMP, kindly do the same. Coast Guard, BJMP and BFP. Tingnan natin kung ano yung may babawas natin sa 135 billion na requirement for 2021, assuming that we pass this measure before 2021. So tingnan natin kung magkano mababawas natin. Kung mayroong mandatory contribution of say 5%. PNP? Calculator lang. Yung sa PS nyo, kunin nyo yung 5% deduction as mandatory contribution kunwari. Magkano? AFP? Ding? Who wants to go first?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator De La Rosa.
Sir, matanong ko lang, Mr. Chairman, kung yung 5% na sinasabi mo is sa buong PS o sa yung PS na para sa active service?
No, base pay. Base pay.
No, no.
Say we deduct 5% from their base pay. So I want to know how much can be generated para mabawas natin sa 135 billion na nasa NEP ngayon. If we deduct,
Base
say
pay,
yeah.
active at saka yung retired kasama?
No. Active personnel. Kasi doon tayo
okay.
pwede mag-deduct ng mandatory contribution. Because
Okay, sir.
that's one of the options eh.
Thank
So
you, sir.
how much can we generate from say 5% or even 10% na contribution ng mga nasa active service para mabawas natin sa 135 billion na requirement for retirement pay?
Sir, question lang. Sir?
Yes, sir. Senator Drilon?
Yes, the figures were given by the different agencies of our uniform sector. May we have the totals? How much is the budgetary and fiscal requirement of all the military uniform personnel whose retirement fund is annually appropriated? We have several figures. Can somebody, sir, somebody from the staff tell us what's the magnitude that we're talking
Yes.
about in total?
The total figure under the 2021 NEP for retirement benefits ito, lahat na, pati lump sum, all in, 135 billion, 822 million, 111,000 pesos. That's
So
why I'm asking the military and uniformed personnel kung mag-deduct tayo ng say 5% or 10% as mandatory contribution. So we have come up with this figure kasi ang total na base pay nila 163 billion 290 million 482,000, no, under the still under the NEP ito, no, the NEP still under the 2021 NEP. So if we take away say 5%, we can generate on an annual basis 8 billion 167 million 241,000. Kung 10%, so easily that's 16.3 billion pesos that we can deduct from the 135 billion appropriations for retirement pay. Kung sasamahan pa natin ang increase in the retirement age as proposed by Senator Dick Gordon, makaka-generate pa rin tayo ng konting reduction. And then, if we can still go for other options like sale or disposition of government assets at makaka-generate ng income, ito yung mga simulations that we want to know or find out from the stakeholders, including the Bureau of Treasury, DBM, and other resource persons. And of course, from the senators, from us, no?
Yes, you got it right in the head, nail in the head, Mr. Chairman, when you said we need all of these simulations. Because when we decide, we have to know where are we, what's the bottom line. So you're correct, Mr. Chair, and I support you there. We need simulations. If it's contributory, what should it be? But ang importante dito, sir, hindi nyo pa ho sinasabi ang ating past service liabilities. If we are going to make it contributory and have a fund, we have also to allocate for past service liabilities, as Senator Gordon mentioned. At this stage, it's already 5.5 trillion, if I recall correctly, the figure that he mentioned. So, yes, I fully agree, Mr. Chair. Let's have simulations so that we will know what are the magnitudes we're talking about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drilon. So, Senator De La Rosa, it's now your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, for the record, I just would like to state that yung diniscuss kanina na possible options ni Senator Ralph Recto ay yan po ay equally exactly almost the same sa version ko po sa pension bill na ito, and except of course yung isang binanggit lang niya about indexation. Yung indexation, Mr. Chairman, in my version of this bill is that wala nang indexation once this bill is passed into law, but yung kay suggestion ni Senator Recto was pwede respetuhin pa rin natin yung indexation na ginagawa. So I am open, Mr. Chairman, na pwede pa rin nating gawin yung indexation. But dagdag ko rin, Mr. Chairman, isang punto, sabi ni Minority Leader during the Senate hearing ni Senator Gordon, ang feedback ng mga officers, mga commanders, na mga service commanders regarding extension of service from 56 years old up going 60 or 62 ay open daw itong mga officers for discussion. But I just would like to inform this committee that during our brief, quick meeting with Senator Bongo, with sergeant majors of all these military and uniform services, itong mga sergeant majors ay majority of them ayaw nila na i-extend pa sila beyond 56 years old dahil nga sabi nila itong trabaho daw ng military at uniform service ay very stressful. Yung 56 years old sa military, kung i-quit mo sa civilian life, baka 65 years old na daw yan dahil sobrang stress at buhay nila habang nasa serbisyo. Kaya gusto ko lang iparating na yung stand, please correct me, yung mga sergeant majors, yung nag-usap tayo with Senator Bongo, sabi nyo, ayaw na ninyo beyond 56. But your commanders, yung mga officers, ay pwede pa daw pag-usapan. So yun lang, mga inputs lang yung Mr. Chairman na gusto ko iparating. I would like to ask this question to GSIS, Mr. Chairman, if meron tayong representative ng GSIS dito.
Yes, we have. GSIS, kindly acknowledge.
Yes, we are present.
Yeah, they're present. Senator De La Rosa.
Yes, gusto ko lang bigyang linaw yung tanong ni Minority Leader kanina from GSIS. Correct me if I'm wrong, my impression yung after nung batas na hihiwalay na yung PNP from GSIS, am I correct na binalik nyo sa amin yung aming contribution? Lahat-lahat binalik nyo sa amin? Walang naiwan na para sa agency namin? Pwede bang matanong sa GSIS? Kasi ako nakatanggap ako noon ng around 70,000 pesos ata. My rank was major then during that time. Around almost 70,000 yung aking natanggap from GSIS. Yun ba yung kabuuan ng aking contribution since I was a cadet in the PMA? Binalik nyo sa akin yung 70,000?
Good morning. This is Vilma Fuentes, VP for Operations. In 1996 February, it was the last contribution ng ating uniform personnel. And so lahat po ng na-terminate by virtue of that separation, we paid them the cash surrender value and the retirement portion. Pag below 60 years old, but pag may 15 years in service na, but below 60 years old, they were paid of the separation and then they had pension at age 60. Kung below 15 years in service naman, they were paid of the separation benefit and they were paid at age 60. Yun po yung naging trend natin dun sa ating uniform personnel. They personally claimed their coverage so far as life insurance and retirement insurance concerned. May mga PNP personnel po tayo na pensioner nung 60 years old na sila. After, yes sir, nakamute po kayo.
You're on
Yeah.
mute, Senator. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. Follow-up question ko is, in the bill that I authored, no, I proposed that a separate subsidiary be established for the management and maintenance of the military and uniformed personnel retirement fund, MUPRF, either through the passage of an original charter by the Congress or through Republic Act number 11232, otherwise known as the Revised Corporation Code of the Philippines. GSIS, are you amenable to this?
Attorney Lucio.
Good morning, Your Honor. This is Attorney Lucio Yu Jr. from the Legal Services Group.
Thank you.
As to the question of whether we are agreeable of in case of a subsidiary will be established to manage and administer the MUP fund, we would rather go with the version of Senator Bongo, which also mandates the creation of a separate and independent GOCC to manage the fund. And that I think that was what was agreed with the task force and the high-level meeting with the Office of the President 2 years ago. And but we will submit to whatever wisdom of the senators. But I think it would be best that a separate GOCC will be established to manage the MUP fund. Although, as agreed upon before, GSIS can help in management as an investment manager of the funds that will be managed by that GOCC.
Okay, thank you. So, ayaw niyong hawakan, ha? Sakit ba sa ulo ito?
Not really, Your Honor, but there are really a lot of challenges. First, the nature of the retirement fund. A regular retirement fund for government employees are contributory ever since, and for the military, it has been non-contributory ever since. And the retirement age is rather different. And as I got it from the discussion earlier, a lot of military personnel still prefers 56 years old retirement age, whereas a regular retirement age for government employees is 60 and 65. And of course, the contribution rate, currently it is 21%, 9% for government, and 12% for government and 9% for employees. So these are really things that should be pressed out first before it can be either subsumed with GSIS retirement fund or be managed by GSIS.
Thank you. Maraming salamat. For DND, sino taga DND dito?
Undersecretary Ding Luna.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Sir, during the last committee, merong nagsabi sa isa sa inyo from the AFP na yung currently the MUP pension is non-contributory in nature. Accordingly, some argued that making it contributory will be unconstitutional. Hindi ako lawyer, pero yung nagsabi ata ay lawyer from the AFP. May we know your thoughts on this? Maging unconstitutional daw pag mag-contribution.
Your Honor, the judge advocate general is here and they said that they did not say that's unconstitutional. I don't know where it came from.
We do not have a statement to that effect, Mr. Chair.
Wala ba?
Wala daw po, Your Honor.
Vice Admiral yun eh. May sinight pa siya na provision ng konstitusyon na dapat papel daw talaga ng gobyerno ang pagbigay ng pensyon sa ating mga kasundaluhan. Hindi daw dapat mag-contribute yung mga sundalo ng pera para sa kanilang pensyon. May sinabi siyang ganun to that effect. But anyway,
I think Senator De La Rosa, you're referring to Vice Admiral Aris de los Reyes, my classmate.
Yes, Your Honor.
I read about it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hindi pala yung lawyer, sir. But, Yun na lang, Mr. Chairman, kasi marami pang magtatanong.
Yeah,
Yun
thank
lang,
you.
sir. Maraming
Before, very
salamat.
quickly lang. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very quickly lang before I recognize Senator Gordon, with your permission. May follow-up question lang ako para sa GSIS. Kailan nyo ginawa yung latest actuarial study ninyo? GSIS? When did you conduct your latest actuarial study on the retirement pay?
May I request our SVP for Actuary to answer that question, Your Honor?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your honor. The last time we did that study was we got the data based on 2016 membership from both AFP and PNP, and we did that late 2017 up to early 2018, and that was also turned over to the Bureau of Treasury.
Okay, kindly, kung mag-extrapolate tayo, no, to apply it sa present time, 2020 or even 2019. Ang sinasabi nyo rito, the seed fund shall require an amount, if no reforms are introduced to the existing pension system, the seed fund shall require an amount equivalent to 5.57 trillion. However, if reforms are implemented, specifically the deletion of the automatic indexation feature, formulation of a mandatory contribution, and the designation of a minimum pensionable age, yung amount mare-reduce siya sa 2.03 trillion.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, kung i-extrapolate natin, fast forward tayo 2020, somehow may validity pa rin itong study ninyo, di ba? I-adjust lang yung figures.
Yes, sir, but we will have to consider po yung sinasabi nyo kanina joint resolution number 1, because I think may mga provide yung mga tranches for salary increases for the military po noong 2018 and 2019. So i-consider po namin yun, sir. So
Can you do that? Para next hearing, we can hear from you.
yes, sir. Opo. Opo
Okay,
po.
thank you. Yeah, with that, Senator Gordon is recognized. Kindly unmute, Senator Dick. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Ping. Far be it from my mind to just open my mouth right now. I was just listening intently because I know that this is a very serious problem. And I wanted to make sure what the bottom lines are. I believe that the bottom lines must be secured first. How much do we actually owe? Originally, if GSIS were to take over the fund, separate from the regular government fund, the amount would be about 5.57 trillion pesos. That would be the value of trust fund, according to a GSIS actual study as cited in 2017 fiscal risk statement. However, Mr. President, in 2018, we increased the salaries of our soldiers, which means that this will dramatically increase the 5.57 trillion to maybe about 7 to 8 trillion pesos, something that we do not have in our pocket. Now, Mr. President, I think it is important to understand that we cannot just give people something that we don't have. And that must be realized by everyone right away. And to my mind, the reason why also we are increasing the retirement age to 60 is simply because, not because of the pension, but because I think there's a lot of good years for the military to serve 60, and it is just a bonus that they will not be paid right away. However, for the sergeant majors, which was referred to by my good friend Senator Bato, there was only going to be a few sergeant majors that were going to be retained to ensure continuity of training, because the sergeant majors are the ones really running the rank and file of the military, and we don't want to lose their experience. We're not going to retain all the sergeant majors. We're just going to retain a few of them so that we can handle that. So I think we can handle that. But the bottom line really is to look for money upon which we can pay this on the longer run, Mr. President. If we do not look for money, well, the only way we can look for money is to bring in investments, enrich the country so that we can strengthen the military. That is an action that has been done by the Japanese, by the Koreans, by the Chinese, and by everybody. So until we don't increase the military, the economy, we're not going to be able to pay right away our military. So what do we do, Mr. President? Well, I'm going to be very frank at the risk of being severely criticized by some of my friends who run the Armed Forces Retirement Board. When the Armed Forces Retirement Board was run, Mr. President, it was run to the ground. And the truth of the matter is, we lost a lot of money from the Armed Forces Retirement Board. No, sundalo na yan nagpapatakbo yan na wala pa yung pera. So again, that is dagdag to our problems right now, Mr. President. In addition to this, in 1948, the original retirement age of the military was really 60 years of age. Now, President Marcos made the compulsory retirement of all AFP officers from 60 and brought it down to 56 years old, compulsory retirement for all AFP officers. Obviously, that put pressure on our pension system. Now, we really have to do a combination of looking for money and making adjustments on the retirement age, and at the same time, trying to figure out a situation where we can get our military well paid. I would not go as far as calling everybody a hero in the military because we owe them simply because they offer to serve our country and to defend the country. That doesn't automatically classify themselves as a hero, and I don't have to say that. I'm just saying that just to put it in perspective. However, Mr. President, if we really want them to be paid well, then, like I said, all of us will have to put our heads together. And it is the Senate and the Congress that makes policy. Now, Mr. President, at some point in time, let me cite a little history. In World War I, when the soldiers of America returned, they were promised $1,000 each, Mr. President. And this was never given to them. Until 1932, the bonus marchers went to Congress and demanded that they be paid. They camped in Washington, D.C., until a certain individual that we all know by the name of General Douglas MacArthur, who was then Chief of Staff, was ordered, I believe, by Hoover or by Coolidge to disperse them. That is a sad chapter in American history, to disperse your own troops. Now, when they were dispersed, Mr. President, in return for that, they were given $300,000, including their survivors. And I'm sorry, $100,000, including their survivors, to be able to assuage them and to go back. Then World War II happened. Then America had to print money to cover the war. And then after the war, America was beefed up by a strong economy, wartime economy. And because of that, they were even able to give the GI Bill of Rights. We don't have that kind of situation here, unfortunately, in our country. And therefore, it behooves all of us, uniformed and civilian, to come out and find out what are the bottom lines. What can we really afford? And it behooves Congress to stop giving something that we can't afford, Mr. President, because we're giving money that we can't afford left and right to our people, which is good. But if we cannot afford it, it will just foment or delay
Sige lang.
risk, Mr. President. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. Now, if we give it to the GSIS, I'm in favor of having a separate fund undertaken by the GSIS, pero kwentas claras. Hindi maibibigay kagad lahat yan. At least it will be run by an experienced group of people with actuarials who will be able to handle the fund very, very well. And that is why it is so important that we tarry a little and be very, very careful, because if we make a mistake here, a lot of people can be, cajoled by demagogues to say, oh, you see, the government doesn't take care of our military. Well, in fact, Mr. President, there are other things that we can do. For an example, we can start, and I'm in favor of this, start conscription, having young people take a 2-year sabbatical in the military. That way we don't have to pay so much GSIS, so much military pension. And I think if we do that, it will be a great equalizer. So we are looking at a cocktail of solutions here, Mr. President. The first part of the cocktail is to really increase the retirement age to 60, Mr. President, and make sure that we have a chief of staff that can make policy for the next 3 years so that there is continuity and consistency in the way we run our military. But we can no longer go on compadrasco. Marami akong kaibigan nagpatakbo ng armed forces Disciplinary Regulatory Armed Forces Retirement Board, Mr. President. Kaibigan rin ni Ping yan, Senator Ping. Yung mga kaklase pa ata si Senator Ping doon. But, you know, nobody's ever been, I don't know if I could be wrong, nobody's ever been made to answer. But be that as it may, we have to correct the mistakes of the past so that we can repair the future, Mr. President. If we don't, we'll go helter-skelter. We might create a bigger problem. I'm not saying we should not address it. All I'm saying is should really put all the financial minds of the people together and maybe come out even with the suggestion that the retirement pay will be given, but on a delayed basis until the economy is corrected. This is another reason why we have to improve our economy, get more businesses to come out, and that's why I worry about bringing down the corporate income tax just like that, because we were going to have to look for another set of money to look for money for the corporate income tax that will be reduced. That's why we have to be really, really careful these days, Mr. President. With the pandemic upon us, with all the expenditures we're making, labas lahat yan. Walang bumabalik na pera dyan. So pagka ganyan ang labas, nawawaldas ang pera na hindi naman natin gustong mawaldas pero kailangan natin bigyan ng tao ng suporta. And so it is important, to my mind, that we tarry a little and let's do it step by step and continue the TWG every day until we're able to find out what kind of solutions we can have. Thank you, Mr. President, and I hope I did not step on anybody's toes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Dick. By the way, the material sources that you discussed, no, yung mga resource persons that you discussed with or deliberated with during your subcommittee hearing will form part of this committee's records. So,
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for allowing me, because I think this is one of the first things that we have to do, and I know you agree with it, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
thank you. Senator Amy, you have some follow-up questions? Senator Amy.
My question was struck by this FOA report regarding your property and plant equipment.
Who's speaking? Kabilang committee hearing yata yun. Anyway, I'd like to hear from the Bureau of Treasury. BTR, Bureau of Treasury, are you still there?
Senator Lacson. So,
Yeah.
Sir, following nga po yung earlier study of GSIS in 2017 and the results were also made in 2018, we have already have several consultations with the MUP personnel. And our position, and it continues to stand po, is that we really would like already for the discontinuation of the automatic indexation feature. At the same time, we are also, our position is already to start the mandatory contributions for both the active and new entrants of the MUP, so that we can be able to already build a fund, the corpus of the funds that will be managed by a new entity if GSIS is still, at this point, still not willing to administer the fund. But in our discussions with them, they are naman willing to be able to help manage the fund in the same way that they are managing the government employees fund. We're also, our position is to increase the pensionable age to 60 from 56. At the same time, we also are looking for additional sources of funding, including the proceeds from the disposition of the assets of the military. Senator Lacson, as you very well know, for the next 2 years would really be very difficult for the economy, recognizing that for 2020, we are already posting a deficit of 9.6%, and we would also be in the same range for 2021. So it's just appropriate that we also need to act now, and we are willing to work on a very viable and sustainable solution with both the Senate and the members of the MUP in crafting a structure that would be sustainable and at the same time get us out of these woods confronting the problem of the MUP personnel. Maraming salamat po.
Sure.
Thank you, Treasurer Leah. Before I recognize Senator Drilon, can we take this, take it one by one? Magkano yung kaya nating i-generate? Halimbawa sa yung sources of funding, ano? Yung mandatory contribution, if implemented, how much do you think can we generate? Kasi ang target natin dito is to form a seed fund, di ba?
Yes.
That according to GSIS, although out of date na yung study, nasa 5.5, I suppose it's no longer 5.5 trillion.
That's
But
right po.
kung may seed money tayo, pwedeng doon mag-generate ng sources to up to form part of the appropriations para sa retirement pay ng ating mga retirees. So, isa-isahin natin, sa mandatory, ano yung nakikita niyong projection na ma-generate? Mandatory contribution. That's one.
Mr. Chairman, at this point po, we have not really done any calculation kasi po we still would like to get the data from the AFP given that yung dati pong data na they gave us already based on the 2016 personnel. And at the same time rin po, tumaas na rin po yung the salaries, the basic pay because of Joint Resolution number 1. And we also would like to find out the coverage, whether we will go along with the active personnel or yung new entrants lang po. So, Mr. Chair, I think at this point, wala pa po kaming mga figures that we can provide. But if we will agree on this, as you have mentioned, some simulations, given some parameters, then we can build up scenarios so that we will know how much would be the proceeds that we can generate out of the other sources of funding, including po yung assets of the military, and if they will start already on a contributory nature to build up the MUP fund.
Thank you. That's actually the short-term objective ng public hearing na ito para makapag-simulate tayo. How about yung sources of funding coming from the lease or joint development of MUP assets and other government properties? Meron na kayo idea how much can be generated? Or may idea na ba kayo which of the government assets can be used for the purpose?
Mr. Chair, we asked kasi po before from the military what are their assets. Until now, medyo hindi pa po nasasabi lahat ito. Pati po yung mga other mga assets po nila. So we asked them sometime back in 2018. So we are still requesting from the MUP about those assets. And of course, kasi po, Mr. Chair, if we're looking at the disposal of these assets at this time, of course, may not be the right time given already the prices of real estate, no? So we should also be opportunistic in the disposition of these assets.
Okay, yung discontinuance of automatic indexation, how much can we generate? Or how much can be reduced in terms of expenditures?
Again, Mr. Chair, I think this is something na we also would like to get from the military kasi nga po yung pong data that they furnished before, incomplete, and it was still in 2016 when wala pa po yung mga new retirees that were enrolled after the 2016 data was provided. Anyway, so Mr. Chair, if you can provide us some time, then we will work with GSIS to be able to come up with some of the numbers that you are requesting for.
Okay, how much time do you need to conduct all this, to update your actuarial study?
Mr. Chair, may we ask from GSIS kasi sila po yung nag-conduct.
Yeah, GSIS, please.
Your Honor, sir. We will still work on the 2016 data and just make simulation on the salary increases, or we will get the data from the military already.
We're all in this together, ano? So I suppose the armed forces and the PNP as well as the other uniformed personnel should cooperate. Otherwise, baka bigla maputol yung retirement ninyo pag wala na makuha pera yung gobyerno. So, wala naman choice kundi pagtulong-tulungan ito. So I hope you will just form a mini technical working group among yourselves. And so in the next hearing, we can come up with something concrete.
Yes,
Can
Your
we do
Honor.
that?
Yes, Your Honor, we will simulate based on what we have now. We
Thank
can
you.
do simulation, sir.
Yeah, Senator Dillon is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was what I was driving at the first hour of this hearing, that we need a working document based on a study. And here, the Bureau of Treasury and the GSIS is on that track. So we have to we have to ask, as the Bureau of Treasury and GSIS to update their study, tell us what are the magnitudes that we are looking at on a simulation of the different scenarios that we would like to see, and how it will be funded. We take note that there is a study as of 2016, and therefore this is what we need at this point. Update, we ask the Bureau of Treasury and the GSIS to update this 2016 study, and that is our starting point, sir. That's my submission, and very critical is this study that they're conducting, and with the simulation that they would take up as premises for whatever budget requirements or fiscal requirements that we would have to face. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The chair is in total agreement with the minority leader. So how much time do you need? So ang target natin dito is to pass this measure before the end of the year para hindi natamaan yung 2021 budget. Pati yung retirement and all, ano? So it might be a tall order, but I think it is doable, provided that all the stakeholders are cooperating, and vigorously. So yun lang yung appeal ng chair to the AFP, PNP, BJMP, BFP, Coast Guard, kung pwedeng crack your heads together and then come up with a workable simulation that we can discuss in the next hearing. So I go back to my previous question. How much time do you need to conduct that actuarial study or update the 2016 study?
Your Honor, 3 weeks to 4 weeks from receipt of the data, sir.
From receipt of the data. So, gaano kabilis magpadala ng data ang armed forces, ang PNP, and the other armed services? Uniform services.
Maybe we can request BTR, Bureau of Treasury and GSIS to put on record what is the data that they would need so that mas maliwanag na ito ang kailangan natin, and through the committee require the armed forces and the PNP to submit this data to the study group, Mr. Chair. That's my suggestion.
I agree. So, BTR and GSIS, can you spell out ano mga data kailangan nyo? Nandito naman sila.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, we will do that po. We will provide you with the list of requirements.
No, I think the Senate committee would like you to already tell them so that they will instruct the MUP to submit already, ASA.
Actually, sir, we require the list of the active members, how many years of service, the age, the salary, the longevity pay, and for the pensioners, how many pensioners?
Slowly. They're taking notes.
Sorry po, sir.
Slowly.
Sir, can we ask the GSIS and the BTR to submit by this afternoon?
Yes, sir.
So it is accurate. Submit it to the chairman, and the chairman will request our armed forces, our military uniform personnel, to comply with this within a certain period.
Yes, sir.
And the study group will have 4 weeks from the submission as they have committed. So when we request that by this afternoon, isubmit yun na lahat in writing.
Yes, sir. Submit ko po sa kay chair. Opo.
And simultaneously, I will require the members of the MUP to submit as required.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Leah again po, may we also request the MUP to submit the list of their assets? Because we've been asking that
Yeah.
already before.
Okay. Kaya nga eh. So, Leia, ilagay mo lang lahat na kailangan mo. And our chairman will require our uniform personnel to submit all of this data because we need this in order to come up with a solution. So, lahat na data, put it in writing and request our chair to use his office to have this data available so that we can come up with a proposed measure before pass the proposed bill. Ako, realistically, Mr. Chair, by the first quarter of next year.
We'll submit to the office of the chairman this afternoon, Senator Lacson.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Alam nyo naman kung ano yon. Baka pwede sabihin nyo na kasi may time lag pa yung pagsusulat ninyo. You spell it out now. They're taking notes. So they're effectively required to submit immediately because these are available records. Otherwise, oh yeah.
Yeah.
One by one.
Sir, sir, can I speak na po? The list of active members po from all branches of the military. So yung base pay, longevity pay, at saka po yung salary, latest salary po. And then, for the pensioners, how much yung pension, at saka, actually for pensioners, sir, yung how much yung pension lang. The issue is with the active members kasi po meron po yung past service liability. So titingnan din po natin kung how many years of service na po yung na-render niya, kung may vested na siya to retirement. So, name, usually sir pala hindi ko po pinaprovide yung name, parang ano lang, it's just a number, parang hindi binibigay yung pangalan because of the information privacy. So yung name, yung ano lang, yung number, ID number, I do not know, parang ganon, kung hindi mo pwede yung name. Tapos, how many years in service po, anong age, at saka yung monthly salary, at saka yung longevity pay niya, yung current, kumbaga yung years of service, yung longevity pay.
That's it. And then you're asking them to bear their assets.
Mr. Chair.
Leah.
Yes, sir. Opo, yung pong list of assets and if they have already the appraised value.
Wala na? That's it?
Yes, sir. Opo.
GSIS?
Yes,
Tapos
sir.
na?
Opo, sir, we will provide you, sir, with specific data pa rin kasi baka meron kaming nakalimutan. Pero basically po, yung opo.
Actually, Mr. Chair, they already have those information. They just have to update based on the 2016.
Yes, sir. I-update namin yung salary kasi basically. Kasi
So, the chair will now ask one by one. PNP, AFP, BJMP, Bureau of Fire, Coast Guard. When can you submit all those data to the chair? Make a firm commitment because hindi ko ito titigilan dito. When? Yusek, Ding, Luna.
1 week ba, sir? 1 week. 7 days from now. Sir, ang problema lang doon yung assets kasi marami tayo, puro presidential proclamation. Walang titulo yan. How do we evaluate that?
Whether or not it's covered by presidential proclamation, untitled, submit nyo lang.
We will just submit, sir. Okay, sir. Pero yung valuation, sir, baka mahirap din.
Medyo matagal yung 1 week. 3 days.
Yes, sir. Will do.
I think
Yes, sir.
The numbers, especially personnel numbers, are available right away. And they can submit that right away, Mr. President.
Yes. That's only numbers lang ito. Hindi naman, sabi nga, yung data privacy, yung GSIS, they don't need the names, no? Puro data lang ito. So when? PNP? 3 days. Oh, 3 days. BFP? 3 days. When I say 3 days, Wednesday, BFP. Bureau of Fire.
For the BJMP, sir,
Unmute. Yeah.
yung 3 days, maybe if we can have it 2 days, so konti lang naman kami.
So in 2 days. Oh, that's even better. BFP. Bureau of Fire.
Yes, sir. We will comply with the 3-day requirement, sir.
Okay. Coast Guard.
Within 3 days, sir. Within 3 days.
Okay. So palampagin namin kayo sa Wednesday. So with that, with the permission, unless meron pang ibang gusto magtanong, with the permission of my colleagues, the hearing is suspended.
Sir, I have been consulting the military officers here present. Baka sir, pwede natin pag-isipan na we'll have a separate law for retirement and separation benefit of the armed forces. Anyway, talaga namang hiwalay kami sir by Republic Act 6975. Yung civilian talaga sir, inihiwalay sa military. And also, if we will have a different retirement system by age, so we will be saving, sir. But if the other services will not do so, so we will be saving for the same pie. We will be sharing the same pie. So I think, sir, baka pwede natin pag-isipan na we'll have a separate retirement system and the benefit system for the armed forces. Dahil talaga naman, sir, iba rin sir, yung sinabi ni Senator Bato kanina sir, iba yung stress factor ng sundalo. Baka iba-iba sir talaga ang sistema. Yun lang sir, thank you.
Okay, well taken or noted. Any more?
Yes, in response.
Yes, Senator Dillon.
Yes, in response, yes, that is one of the options that we should consider. All options are available at this point and depends really on the data that the committee will receive from you guys. I'm open to that separate retirement fund, but let's have this as one of the options which you will decide on later on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yusek Echeverry.
Mr. Chair, the DILG together with PLLO and Yusek Torres' office are consolidating the 3 tri-bureau records. We will facilitate, Mr. Chair, so that this will be brief, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. So you're still committed to submit within 3 days, huh?
Chair.
Nothing has changed.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Gordon, would you like to...
I agree, Mr. President, and I think they can do it separately so long as they bring it to us within 3 days, and so long as we can consolidate all the information from personnel to assets so that we would know the parameters of what we can do, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, yes, Undersecretary Flores. Kindly unmute. Go ahead, go ahead. We cannot hear you.
Wala.
We cannot hear you still.
Just ask them to submit the written position paper, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. We cannot hear anything.
Yeah, Yusek Torres, what happened to you? Naka-unmute ka naman, but we
Hindi.
cannot hear you. Ilaw yung binuksan mo eh.
Patawag muna yung apo. Apo, alam niya yan.
Wala, nothing.
Sige na, Mr. Chairman, we move to suspend the hearings until we get
Yeah,
the clarity.
there's a motion to suspend the hearing, so hearing no objection, the hearing suspended. You're reminded to comply, ah. Thank you.